My son-in-law, the worthless piece of trash, thought I didn't know. He thought my brain had turned to mush, that I was just a helpless old man he could bleed dry, one bill at a time. But when he tiptoed into my room, his shadow slick with greed, ready to snatch a few hundred from my wallet, he was met with a jolt that scrambled his senses and exposed the rotten core of his soul. He'll never forget that night, and neither will my daughter. Before we dive into the sordid details of how I turned the tables on a predator living under my own roof, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment letting me know what you would have done in my situation. Your support means the world. My hand, spotted with the roadmap of 72 years, trembled as I counted the cash for the fourth time. 20, 40, 60, 80. The numbers swam in front of my tired eyes, but the deficit was brutally clear. $900. Gone. Vanished from the worn leather wallet that had been my father's. I sank onto the edge of my mattress, the springs groaning in protest. For over 5 decades, that wallet had lived in the exact same spot on my nightstand, a silent companion through life's triumphs and tragedies. But this morning, the emptiness of it felt like a fresh wound. "Mistake," I whispered to the silent room, the word tasting like ash. "You must have made a mistake, Arthur." But the lie was hollow. Where in God's name would a retiree like me spend $900? My life was a closed loop of simple routines: the grocery run to Kroger, the weekly breakfast special at Miller's Diner, the occasional trip to the hardware store for a project to keep my hands busy. The largest purchase I'd made in a month was a $20 bag of premium bird seed for the finches that visited the feeder outside my window. A wave of cold dread washed over me. I began a frantic, pathetic search, my movements clumsy with age and anxiety. I dropped to my knees, the cartilage screaming in protest, and swept my hand under the heavy oak bed frame. Nothing but dust bunnies and a forgotten slipper. I tore through my dresser drawers, upsetting neatly folded stacks of shirts and socks, my desperation mounting with each empty pocket I turned inside out. I checked every coat hanging in the closet, my fingers probing the linings for a misplaced wad of cash. Nothing. The knot in my stomach tightened, a cold, hard fist of certainty. The familiar, comforting aroma of brewing coffee and frying bacon wafted up the stairs. It was Laura's morning ritual, a sound and smell that had brought a sliver of joy back into this house after my Martha passed. She was humming a cheerful off-key tune from one of those pop stations she loved. It was the soundtrack to a normal Tuesday morning, but everything felt discordant now, as if the entire world had been knocked off kilter. My legs felt like lead weights as I descended the stairs, each step a conscious effort. Laura stood at the stove, a vision of domestic peace in her faded blue apron, her blonde hair pulled back in the same messy ponytail she'd worn since she was a teenager. "Morning, Dad," she chirped, flashing a bright smile over her shoulder. "Coffee's hot. Eggs will be ready in a minute." "Laura, honey," I started, my voice gravelly. Have you seen any money? I seem to be missing $900. Her smile vanished, replaced instantly by a mask of concern. "What?" "Dad, no, I haven't been in your room at all this morning. Are you absolutely sure? Maybe you put it somewhere for safekeeping and forgot?" The question, though innocent, was a sharp sting to my pride. Was this it? Was I becoming that cliché? The forgetful old man, his mind unraveling, pointing fingers at his loved ones because he couldn't trust his own memory? "What's all the whispering about?" Rick's voice, rough from sleep, cut through the kitchen. He leaned against the doorframe, still in yesterday's wrinkled work shirt, a smirk playing on his lips. His dark, intelligent eyes darted between me and Laura. "Money troubles again, Art?" He always called me Art, never Dad, Never Mr. Peterson. A small thing, but it was a constant, subtle jab of disrespect. Rick, did you happen to go into my room last night for any reason? I kept my voice measured, my gaze locked on his. His posture shifted instantly. The lazy slouch disappeared, replaced by a defensive stiffness. His arms crossed over his chest like a shield. What are you trying to say, Art? You think I'm some kind of thief? I'm not implying anything, I said, though we both knew I was. I'm asking a simple question. I work my ass off 12 hours a day driving a truck to provide for this family. His voice rose, laced with manufactured outrage. I don't need to steal from anyone, especially not my own family. Laura stepped between us, her hands fluttering like nervous birds. Dad, please! Rick would never. There has to be another explanation. But I watched Rick's face, the way his eyes refused to meet mine, the way a muscle twitched in his jaw. It was the over-the-top defensiveness of a guilty man. It was too quick, too rehearsed. A chilling certainty settled in my chest, heavy and cold as a block of ice. Of course, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I'm sure it'll turn up. Rick snatched his lunchbox from the counter, gave his reflection a preening glance in the hallway mirror, and headed for the door. Gotta go, I'll be late. The front door slammed shut, rattling the pictures on the wall. Laura placed a gentle hand on my arm. Dad, you've been under so much stress since she passed. Sometimes, when we're grieving, our minds can play tricks on us. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I let her believe it. For now. But my eyes followed Rick's rusty pickup truck as it peeled out of the driveway and disappeared down Elmwood Drive. I had lived alone for 3 years after Martha's passing. I knew every creak of this house, every dollar in that wallet. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being robbed. That evening, the 3 of us gathered in the living room, a hollow pantomime of a happy family. Laura was on the couch, folding a mountain of laundry, sorting Rick's grease-stained work shirts into neat stacks. I hid behind the evening paper, pretending to read the sports section, but my eyes were fixed on Rick. He paced the floor like a caged animal, his restless energy filling the room with a low hum of anxiety. He'd check his phone, run a hand through his greasy hair, then pace some more. Hey, babe, he said suddenly, his voice jarringly loud. He turned to Laura with a smile that was all teeth, a predatory gleam in his eyes. I've got a little surprise for you. Close your eyes. Laura's face, etched with the day's worries, brightened with genuine excitement. Ricky, what did you do? Just close them and hold out your hands. I lowered the newspaper just enough to watch the charade unfold. Rick produced a small, plush velvet box from his jacket pocket. Not the kind of box from a mall kiosk, but one from a high-end jeweler downtown, the kind of place we hadn't been able to afford in years. Laura let out a sharp gasp as she opened it. Oh, Rick, it's stunning. Where did you ever get the money for this? A delicate silver necklace with a single, glittering diamond lay nestled on the black velvet. The diamond caught the lamplight, throwing tiny rainbows across the ceiling. It wasn't huge, but it was real. I'd spent 40 years as a mechanical engineer at the Ford plant. I knew quality when I saw it. This was not cheap costume jewelry. Picked up some extra weekend shifts down at the distribution center, Rick said, his chest puffing out with false pride. Worked all weekend, loading and unloading. Got some serious double overtime pay. You didn't tell me you were working all weekend. Laura's voice was filled with awe, not a shred of suspicion. Wanted it to be a surprise, he said, his voice smooth as oil. When a man wants to provide for his woman, he finds a way. I folded my newspaper with meticulous precision. They must be paying pretty well for weekend labor these days. Rick's smile tightened at the edges, almost imperceptibly. Time and a half on Saturday, double time on Sunday, plus we got hazard pay for handling a shipment of industrial solvents. Which distribution center was that? I asked, my tone one of mild conversational interest. The new Amazon facility over by the airport, he said, without missing a beat, already helping Laura fasten the necklace around her neck. Tough work, but seeing my wife smile like that makes it all worth it. Laura threw her arms around his neck, her eyes shining with happy tears. It's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me. I watched their embrace, the numbers clicking into place in my engineer's brain. A necklace like that, even a small diamond, had to be at least $700 or $800, maybe more. Funny how the math worked out. $900 goes missing from my wallet, and an $800 necklace magically appears. The equation was starting to look sickeningly simple. You're spoiling her, son, I said, forcing a thin smile. She deserves to be spoiled, Rick shot back, his eyes meeting mine over Laura's shoulder. There was a challenge in his gaze, a flicker of defiance. A man's got to take care of his family, whatever it takes. I saw the corner of a receipt peeking out of his back pocket as he sat down. I caught a flash of the store's logo, Silverman's Fine Jewelers. They had a reputation for quality and prices to match. Expensive taste for a truck driver supposedly slumming it at a warehouse on the weekends. Well, I said, pushing myself out of my recliner with a theatrical groan. I think this old man is going to turn in for the night. Long day tomorrow. Are you feeling okay, Dad? Laura looked up, her hand instinctively touching the new diamond at her throat. Just tired, sweetheart. Good night. But I didn't go to sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, the empty wallet in my hands, listening to their muffled voices drifting up from downstairs. Laura's happy laughter was a painful counterpoint to Rick's deep, confident tones as he painted a picture of himself as the hard-working, devoted husband. The connection was no longer a suspicion. It was a certainty. The missing money, the expensive gift, the ridiculously detailed lie about weekend work. A lie I could easily disprove with a single phone call. I had spent my entire career solving problems, diagnosing mechanical failures by meticulously following the evidence. The process was always the same: observe, analyze, deduce. I was now applying that same cold logic to my own family, and the solution I was arriving at was one I never wanted to find. 3 weeks later, the sick feeling of déjà vu was overwhelming. I sat on my bed at dawn, my wallet open in my hands, staring at the blatant theft. Exactly $500 was missing. There was no ambiguity this time, no room to doubt my aging memory. Ever since the first incident, I had become a meticulous accountant of my own finances, keeping a small notebook to track every dollar in and every dollar out. Last night, I'd had $800 tucked away for the month's property taxes. This morning, I had $300. The robbery had to have happened in the dead of night, while Laura and I were sound asleep. Rick had been the last one home, stumbling in around midnight from a poker game with the guys, reeking of cheap beer and cheaper lies. I placed the violated wallet on my nightstand and walked to the window, peering through the blinds. Rick's truck was already gone. He was a creature of habit, leaving for his route at 7:30 on the dot every morning. But this morning, I'd heard him in the bathroom at 6 a.m., whistling a jaunty tune while he showered. Whistling. The pattern was disgustingly clear. Steal the money, then put on a show of normalcy, even cheerfulness. Wait a few days, then launder the stolen cash into some grand gesture that would cement Laura's devotion and keep her loyalty hopelessly divided between her husband and her father. He was playing a long game, and he thought his opponent was a senile old fool. He was wrong. I was done being a victim. I picked up my smartphone, my fingers surprisingly steady, and tapped in a search. Covert Security Cameras, Cleveland. The voice on the other end of the line was young and sharp. SpyTech Solutions. How can I direct your call? Good morning. I need to speak to someone about small, hidden surveillance cameras. You've come to the right place. What's the application? Home security, I said, the words feeling strange and bitter. I need something powerful but completely discreet. We've got the new Nighthawk Pro series. Wireless, night vision, motion activated. Streams directly to your smartphone. Very popular with clients who suspect internal discrepancies. He understood immediately. I'll be there within the hour. Downstairs, Laura was rushing to get ready for her shift at the local library. She looked up as I came down the stairs, already dressed in my good coat. Dad, where are you off to so early? Just an errand into town, honey. Need to pick up a few things from an electronics store. Oh, do you want Rick to give you a lift? He mentioned he had a delivery near downtown this morning. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. No, thank you. I'd rather take my own car. She kissed my cheek, her lips cool against my skin. Okay. Be careful with that downtown traffic. They've got construction all over Prospect Avenue. I patted her shoulder, a silent apology for the storm that was coming, hating the deception but knowing it was necessary. I couldn't tell her yet. Not until I had irrefutable, undeniable proof that would shatter her carefully constructed reality. In the car, I glanced at my reflection in the rearview mirror as I backed out of the driveway. The face staring back wasn't the confused, grieving widower of a few weeks ago. The engineer was back in control. He had a problem to solve, and he would approach it with methodical, unemotional precision. The missing sums weren't random. The timing, the amounts, Rick's theatrical defensiveness, it all pointed to a calculated, ongoing operation. He thought he was outsmarting a forgetful old man who wouldn't notice a few $100s here and there. He was about to find out that this old man had spent a lifetime designing systems and anticipating points of failure. And Rick, in his arrogance, had become the most critical point of failure in this household. I drove toward the city with steady hands, my mind already running through the technical specifications I would require. Night vision was essential. Motion activation was a must. High-definition video and, if Ohio law permitted one-party consent, audio recording. Evidence first, confrontation second, justice third. The game had changed. Rick just didn't know he was playing it yet. SpyTech Solutions was located in a nondescript brick building in a part of downtown Cleveland that was more grit than glamour. I parked my Buick between a beat-up van and a luxury sedan, my engineer's mind automatically cataloging the multiple high-definition security cameras aimed at the entrance. To catch a rat, you had to understand the layout of the trap. A bell chimed as I entered. The store was a temple of paranoia and technology. Walls were lined with everything from GPS trackers the size of a thumbnail to audio bugs disguised as pens. A young man with glasses perched on his nose and an air of professional detachment approached me. Can I help you find something, sir? I need a home surveillance camera. It has to be discreet, but I can't compromise on image quality. His face lit up with the passion of a true enthusiast. Residential or commercial application? Personal, I said firmly. I need a crystal clear image, especially in very low light. He led me to a glass display case filled with an arsenal of tiny lenses. The boxes boasted features that sounded like something out of a spy movie. This model here, he said, pointing to a black cube no bigger than a sugar cube, is the Nighthawk Pro, records in 4K, even in total darkness. I picked it up, examining the specs. What about the night vision quality? Military-grade infrared. You'll get perfect facial recognition from 15 feet away. The sensors kick in automatically the moment the ambient light drops below a certain lumen threshold. And the motion activation? Fully adjustable via the smartphone app. You can set the sensitivity so it won't trigger for a dust mote floating by, but it will catch the slightest intentional movement. It's our best seller for a reason. The Nighthawk Pro felt solid and heavy in my palm. 4K resolution, a 150-degree wide-angle lens, wireless streaming, and a battery that could last a week on standby. It was everything I needed to build my case. I'll take it. Driving home, the small, unassuming box sat on the passenger seat, feeling heavier than it should. 43 years I'd spent designing engine components, building things that moved this country forward. Now I was using that same technical aptitude to spy on my own family in my own home. The bitterness of it was a physical taste in my mouth. Laura's car was gone. Her shift at the library didn't end until evening. Rick's truck was also absent. The house was mine. The timing was perfect. I cleared the kitchen table and laid out the components like a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. The user manual was clear and concise, written for people far less technically inclined than myself. Mount the camera, connect it to the home Wi-Fi network, download the app, and calibrate the settings. It was a straightforward process. In my bedroom, I surveyed the environment with a strategic eye. The nightstand was the target area. Across the room, on top of my dresser, sat a collection of framed photographs. A small shrine to a happier time. The largest was an 8x10 of Laura's wedding day. She and Rick, smiling for the camera, blissfully unaware of the future. The frame was deep enough. It would provide the perfect concealment. Positioning the lens required absolute precision. An inch too high, and it would capture the ceiling. An inch too low, and the view would be blocked by the footboard of the bed. I spent nearly 20 minutes making minute adjustments, checking the live feed on my phone until I had the perfect, unobstructed view of the nightstand, my wallet's designated spot, and the glass of water I always kept beside my bed. The app, Secure View, connected seamlessly. A crystal-clear, time-stamped image of my bedroom appeared on my phone screen. I tested the night vision by drawing the heavy blackout curtains. The room plunged into darkness, but on my screen the image merely shifted to a ghostly, high-contrast black and white. Every detail was perfectly visible. Calibrating the motion sensitivity was the final critical step. I set it to a medium threshold and performed a test, walking slowly past the nightstand. Instantly, my phone buzzed with a notification. Motion detected in master bedroom. The system worked flawlessly. Now for the bait. I deliberately placed $300 in cash into my wallet, arranging the bills so the edges were clearly visible. It was just enough to be tempting, a significant score for a thief who thought he'd been getting away clean. The glass of water went in its usual place, a habit Martha had insisted on years ago. Tonight, it might serve as corroborating evidence. Everything was in place. The camera was hidden, the bait was set, the app was armed. I stood in the doorway, took one last look at the tranquil scene, and switched off the light. Tomorrow, everything would change. In the silent darkness, the camera's tiny, invisible infrared eye began its silent vigil. The next morning, I woke before my alarm, a habit ingrained from decades of shift work. But today was different. There was no confusion, no self-doubt. Today, I was an investigator collecting data. I didn't even need to look. I knew the money would be gone. A quick glance confirmed it. The wallet lay open, empty. $300 vanished. Not a flicker of surprise, just a grim, cold satisfaction that the trap had functioned as designed. With hands that were rock steady, I reached for my smartphone. The SecureView app showed a single notification. One motion-triggered recording, time-stamped at 2:17 a.m. Prime time for a thief. My finger hovered over the play button. This was the point of no return. Once I viewed this, all plausible deniability would be gone, replaced by cold, hard, documented fact. The infrared footage flickered to life. The scene began with my empty, silent bedroom. Then, the doorknob turned with agonizing slowness. The door opened without a sound. A figure slipped into the room, moving with a practiced, predatory stealth that sent a chill down my spine. The camera's 4K resolution was devastatingly clear. Rick's face was perfectly illuminated by the infrared light as he crept toward my bed. He moved with the confidence of someone who had done this many, many times. There was no hesitation, no fumbling in the dark. He went straight for the nightstand. His fingers, deft and quick, slipped into the wallet and removed the bills. He did a quick professional count to verify the amount. But then he did something else. Something so vile, so filled with personal contempt, it made my stomach churn. After pocketing the cash, he picked up my glass of water, the glass I drank from first thing every single morning, and deliberately, maliciously spit into it. A thick, viscous glob of saliva. It wasn't an accident. It was a calculated act of profound disrespect. A final, secret fuck you to the old man he was robbing. "How long?" I whispered, my voice choked with rage. How many mornings had I started my day by drinking his filth? I forced myself to watch it again. The theft was one thing, a crime of greed and opportunity. But the spit, that was personal. That was the act of a man who didn't just steal from me, but actively despised me. My hands shook as I saved the video file, creating backups on my phone's internal storage and uploading a copy to a secure cloud server. Evidence this damning was too precious to risk losing. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Laura wouldn't be up for another hour. Rick was likely already gone, whistling his happy tune on the way to work, my $300 in his pocket. I needed to talk to someone, an objective third party who could help me see past the red haze of my anger. I called Jim Patterson. We'd been partners in the engineering department for 30 years. If anyone understood logic and evidence, it was Jim. He answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Art? It's 6 in the morning. Everything okay?" "Jim, I'm sorry to call so early. I need your advice. Something serious." "What's wrong? You sound terrible." "I caught him, Jim. I caught my son-in-law stealing from me on camera." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Are you 100% certain?" "Video evidence. Clear as a bell. It shows his face, shows him taking the money. And Jim, it shows him doing something else. Something that proves this was about more than just cash." "Jesus, Art. What are you going to do?" "That's why I'm calling you. I don't know. Laura, she idolizes him. This will absolutely destroy her." "Evidence is evidence, my friend. You can't unsee it. You can't ignore a snake in your house just because you're afraid of upsetting someone." "I know, but she loves him. She has no idea what kind of man she married." "Well," Jim said, his voice grim, "it sounds like it's high time she found out." After I hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone. The screen displayed a frozen image of Rick's face, his features contorted in a sneer as he leaned over my water glass. The camera had captured it all: the crime, the contempt, the irrefutable truth. I had my evidence. Now came the hardest part: deciding what to do with it. Through the wall, I could hear the floorboards creak in the master bedroom. Laura was getting up, preparing to face another day in blissful ignorance, completely unaware that the man sleeping beside her was a common thief, and worse. The living room felt alien that morning. It was the same room where Martha and I had raised our daughter, The same room where we'd celebrated decades of birthdays and holidays. But now, it felt contaminated. I sat in my recliner, a cup of coffee growing cold in my hand, staring at a leather-bound photo album on the end table. It was from last winter, when Laura and Rick had first moved in. I opened it, and the smiling faces mocked me from the glossy pages. December 10th. Moving day. The driveway was cluttered with boxes. Laura had tears of relief streaming down her face. Rick was shaking my hand, his grip firm, his eyes full of what I had mistaken for sincere gratitude. "Dad, we can't thank you enough," Laura had said, hugging me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. "Without you, we would have been on the street." Rick had stood beside her, a perfect portrait of humility. "Art, I swear, we'll be back on our feet in no time. I just need a couple of months to line up a better trucking route. I'll help out around the house, of course. Earn our keep." "Take all the time you need," I had told them, my heart swelling with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since Martha died. "This is what family does. It's what your mother would have wanted." And for a few weeks, it had been good. Rick was true to his word. He fixed the perpetually leaking faucet under the kitchen sink, a job I'd been putting off for months. He cleaned the gutters before the first heavy snow. We'd even shared a few beers in the garage, talking about engines and his plans for the future. Laura was radiant, blossoming with the happiness of having her family under one roof. She started talking about Christmas, about planting a garden in the spring, about building a life here. So when did it change? When did his gratitude curdle into resentment? When did his helpfulness become a performance? The shift had been insidious, a slow poisoning of the atmosphere. It started with small things. His loud, critical sighs whenever I watched my old black and white movies. His complaints about my weird eating schedule. His habit of leaving his muddy work boots right in the middle of the hallway I'd just cleaned. I'd made excuses for him. He's stressed about money. The job search is getting him down. It's hard for 3 adults to adjust to living together. But the small acts of disrespect had escalated. There were the snide comments about my hoarding when he saw my workshop, the eye rolls when I'd ask him to turn down his blaring music. And then came the comments about my finances. "Old people get forgetful with their money," he'd said to Laura one night, loud enough for me to hear from the next room. "You should probably help him manage his accounts." Looking back now, the audacity was breathtaking. He was laying the groundwork for his defense, preemptively painting me as senile while he was actively planning to steal from me. The photo album held a picture of Christmas morning. Rick was holding up an expensive set of power tools I'd bought him. Laura was wrapped in a new cashmere scarf. We were all smiling, a perfect family portrait built on a foundation of lies. 2 weeks later, the first $900 went missing. Had he been planning it all along? Was his initial helpfulness just reconnaissance, a way to learn my habits, my routines, the layout of my house, the location of my wallet? "Love you, Dad." Laura's voice pulled me from the toxic memories. She stood in the doorway, ready for work, her purse over her shoulder. She leaned down and kissed my forehead, a daily ritual that now felt like a betrayal, even though she was innocent in all of this. "Love you too, sweetheart." "You seem distracted today. Is everything all right?" The weight of the video on my phone felt like a physical object in my pocket. How do you tell your daughter the man she loves, the man she married, is a monster? "Just thinking," I lied. "You go on now, don't be late." She hesitated at the door. "Dad, I know it hasn't been easy having us here, but I'm so grateful. Rick is too. He doesn't show it very well." The words were like daggers. After she left, I closed the album. The happy memories were tainted, artifacts from a life that no longer existed. The engineer in me knew what had to be done. The father in me dreaded it. I had the proof. The question that remained was, what form would justice take? If you're finding this story as intense as I did living it, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had a gut feeling that someone was lying to you, even when you couldn't prove it? My late wife Martha's favorite chamomile tea did little to soothe the rage simmering in my gut. I sat at the kitchen table, the 2025 wall calendar spread out before me like a battlefield map. With a red pen, I began to mark the dates, constructing a timeline of disrespect and manipulation. January 15th. A bold red X. That was the day Rick had called me a stubborn old fool for asking him to take his boots off at the door. He'd smirked as he deliberately tracked mud across the clean floor. Helen had tried to mediate, but the contempt in his eyes had been unmistakable. January 28th. Another X. Maybe if you weren't always hovering and giving unsolicited advice, we'd be in a better financial spot, he'd snapped when I suggested Laura look into a management training program at the library. It wasn't advice, it was an attack, designed to frame me as the source of their problems. February was a bloodbath of red ink. The incidents had become more frequent, more brazen. February 14th, Valentine's Day, the day of the diamond necklace, the day after the first major theft. I circled that date twice. He had been so proud, so smug, playing the role of the generous husband with my money. February 26th. This house feels more like a museum than a home, he'd complained. Can't touch anything, can't move anything. It's like living with a ghost. He was talking about Martha's things, the little touches that still made this house her home. The comment was designed to hurt, and it had. March was even worse. Each X was a fresh wound. Some people just aren't sharp enough to manage their own affairs anymore. Maybe it's time we started looking at some nice retirement communities for you, Art. You're lucky you have us here to look after you. Each comment was a calculated blow, an attempt to undermine my confidence, to make me doubt myself, to isolate me. And all the while he was robbing me blind. He was chipping away at my dignity with one hand while picking my pocket with the other. I closed the calendar. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't just about money. This was about power. He wanted to take over not just my house, but my life, rendering me a helpless dependent. I looked at the clock. 7:30 p.m. Laura was working late. Rick was out with his buddies. Tomorrow I would make a trip downtown. Tonight I would finalize my plan. The video gave me proof of his crime. The calendar gave me a portrait of his character. I would use both to deliver a lesson he would never forget. Some people need to learn that when you bite the hand that feeds you, sometimes that hand bites back. Prankster's Palace was an assault on the senses. Neon signs flashed, novelty horns blared, and the air smelled of plastic and cheap perfume. I checked the address on my phone, feeling ridiculous, a 72-year-old man in a place like this. But my mission was deadly serious. A young clerk with a pierced eyebrow and a bored expression watched me browse the aisles. Looking for anything in particular, Pops? I need something that delivers a memorable, non-lethal consequence, I said, my voice flat. Her boredom evaporated, replaced by a flicker of professional interest. She led me to a glass case filled with electrical gag gifts. The shock items are our most popular for memorable consequences. My eyes landed on it immediately. A wallet. It was made of genuine leather, perfectly weighted, and utterly indistinguishable from a normal billfold. This one. How powerful is the shock? Totally harmless. Standard 9-volt battery. It won't hurt him, but it'll definitely make him jump. Guaranteed to make him piss their pants a little. Excellent, I said. I'll also need some realistic-looking counterfeit money. She raised an eyebrow but led me to a section filled with prop currency used for movies. The bills were astonishingly realistic. The paper quality, the texture, the printing, only a tiny "for motion picture use only" watermark gave them away. How much for $300 worth? Prop money's $20 a stack. The shock wallet is $30. Call it $55, tax included. I paid with crisp, real bills, the irony not lost on me. He wanted my money? Fine. He was about to get it. Back in my car, I reviewed the plan. Tonight, after Laura was asleep, I would make the switch. I'd swap my real wallet for the shock wallet, loaded with the fake bills, and place it in the exact same spot on the nightstand. He wouldn't notice the difference in the dark. The trap was chosen. The bait was prepared. Now, all I had to do was wait for the rat to emerge. The tension at the dinner table was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Laura served the pot roast, trying desperately to pretend everything was normal, but the silence was heavy and suffocating. Rick ate sullenly, shoveling food into his mouth without tasting it. I spent the afternoon cleaning out the garage, I said conversationally, looking directly at Rick. It's amazing what you find when you take the time to really look closely at things. Rick's fork clattered against his plate. He knew something was wrong. He could feel the shift in the power dynamic, even if he couldn't understand it. I've also been looking into home security systems, I continued, slowly buttering a roll. The technology is incredible these days. Little cameras, no bigger than a dime, that can see in total darkness. You can monitor everything right from your phone. A person can have complete peace of mind, knowing exactly who is coming and going, even when they're asleep. Laura looked up, alarmed. Dad, are you worried about burglars? Not burglars from the outside, no, I said, my eyes still locked on Rick. More concerned about internal threats. Rick threw his napkin down on the table. Here we go again. Your paranoia is out of control, Art. For all we know, you're the one misplacing your money and blaming everyone else. Paranoia? I let a cold smile touch my lips. That's an interesting diagnosis, Rick. Tell me, what was the hourly rate for that double overtime you worked at the Amazon facility? I'm curious how it compares to the national average. His face flushed a deep, ugly red. What the hell does that have to do with anything? I'm just interested in how a man who works so hard can still seem to have so many money problems. That's it. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted. He shoved his chair back and stormed out of the room. Laura looked at me, her eyes pleading. Dad, what is going on? Why are you pushing him like this? Sometimes, sweetheart, I said gently, you have to push on a rotten piece of wood to see if it will break. I excused myself and went to my room. I retrieved the shock wallet and the fake bills from their hiding spot. In a few hours, the final act would begin. Tonight the engineer would set his trap, and tomorrow the father would deal with the fallout. The clock on my nightstand glowed. 2:16 a.m. I lay perfectly still, my breathing slow and even, a perfect imitation of deep sleep. But beneath the calm facade, my heart was a trip hammer against my ribs. 3 months of humiliation, theft, and simmering rage had all led to this moment. The shock wallet sat on the nightstand, looking completely innocent in the faint moonlight filtering through the window. The trap was set. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. He was coming. My bedroom door opened with the faintest whisper of sound. He had done this so many times he knew exactly how to avoid making a sound. I kept my eyes closed, listening, tracking his movements by the subtle shift of air in the room. He paused by the foot of my bed, waiting, listening to my breathing to ensure I was truly asleep. Then he moved toward the nightstand. This was it. The silence of the night was shattered by a strangled yelp of pain and surprise. Ah! Son of a... A loud thud followed as he stumbled backward, clutching his hand. The fake money fluttered to the floor around him. I flicked on the bedside lamp, flooding the room with light. I sat up, feigning groggy confusion. Good heavens, what was that? Rick? What in the world are you doing in my room in the middle of the night? He stood there, frozen, blinking in the sudden light like a caught raccoon. The fake bills were scattered at his feet, an undeniable accusation. His right hand was spasming, his face a mask of pain and disbelief. I was thirsty, he stammered, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape. Just getting a glass of water. Water? I said, letting my gaze drift from his face, to the wallet on the floor, to the scattered prop money. From my wallet? And since when does my wallet bite back? I reached for my smartphone, which was already queued up. Or maybe you were thirsty for this, I said, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. The same way you were thirsty when you spit in my water glass. The color drained from his face. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. You're crazy. You're a crazy old man. Am I? I held up the phone, angling the screen so he could see the paused video, his own face illuminated in ghostly infrared. Why don't we watch the instant replay together? I have a feeling it's going to be your least favorite show. The trapped, desperate look in his eyes was all the confession I needed. But this was no longer a private matter. What is going on in here? Laura's terrified voice came from the hallway. I heard a scream. She appeared in the doorway, clutching her robe, her face pale with sleep and confusion. Her eyes took in the scene. Me, sitting up in bed holding my phone. Her husband, standing over a pile of fake money, clutching his hand. The air thick with guilt and accusation. Rick? Dad? What happened? Your husband, I said, my voice devoid of emotion, has been stealing from me for months, Laura. Tonight I finally caught him red-handed. No, that's not possible, she said, the denial automatic, a wife's first instinct. Rick wouldn't. You're mistaken, Dad. You have to be. Am I? I held out the phone. Watch this, and then tell me I'm mistaken. She hesitated, then slowly stepped into the room and took the phone. I pressed play. I watched her face as the video played. I saw the confusion morph into dawning horror. I saw her hand fly to her mouth when the video showed Rick taking the cash. And then I saw her recoil, a small wounded sound escaping her lips, as she watched her husband lean over my water glass and spit into it. Rick, she whispered, turning to him, her eyes wide with a pain that was far deeper than simple anger. That's you. And you spit in my father's water. It's a trick, he blustered, his voice high with panic. He set me up. He's using some kind of deepfake technology to frame me. But his lies were pathetic, transparent. That's my dresser in the background, she said, her voice flat and dead. That's the shirt you wore to dinner. How could he fake that, Rick? How? The dam of her denial finally broke, and the truth came rushing in, a devastating flood. All the little inconsistencies, all the excuses she had made for him, all the expensive gifts, it all clicked into place. She sank onto the edge of my bed, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The beautiful diamond necklace he had given her, bought with my stolen money, suddenly seemed like a vulgar brand of his betrayal. How long? She asked, her voice muffled by her hands. At least 3 months, I said gently. Maybe longer. The silence in the room was a living thing, filled with the wreckage of a marriage and the death of trust. Finally, Laura lifted her head. She looked at the man she had married, and her eyes were empty of love, filled only with a profound and chilling disgust. Get your things, she said, her voice a dead, emotionless whisper. "Get out of my father's house." He started to protest, to plead, but she held up a hand, and the fight went out of him. The trap had been sprung. The verdict had been delivered. Justice, painful and ugly, had finally arrived. The next afternoon, the house was filled with the funereal sound of packing. Laura moved with a numb, mechanical grace, folding her life into cardboard boxes. Rick was sullen and angry, slamming drawers and muttering curses under his breath. I gave them space, knowing there was nothing I could say that would ease my daughter's pain. As she was taping up the last box of kitchen supplies, she finally spoke. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she said, not looking at me. "I was so blind. I defended him. I didn't believe you." "You are not to blame," I told her, my voice firm. "You loved him. You trusted him. That's not a flaw, Laura. That's a virtue. He's the one who broke that trust." She finally looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. "I don't know where we're going to go." "You're going to be fine," I said. "You're strong, and this will always be your home. You can always come back. Alone." Outside, Rick threw the last box into his truck with a final, resentful heave. He turned and glared at me, his face a twisted mask of impotent rage. "You happy now, old man? You destroyed our family." "You destroyed this family, Rick," I said calmly. "I just turned on the lights so my daughter could see what you were doing in the dark. Now go, and take care of her." Laura got into the truck without a word, without a backward glance. I watched the beat-up pickup pull away from the curb and disappear down the street, taking a part of my daughter's heart with it. I walked back into the quiet house. It felt bigger, emptier, but cleaner. The poison was gone. I brewed a single cup of coffee and sat in my recliner, the silence a comforting balm. The problem had been identified. A solution had been engineered and implemented. The results, though painful, were successful. Protecting your family doesn't always mean keeping them safe from the world outside. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is having the courage to expose the enemy within, no matter how much it hurts. My home was secure once more. The system was back in balance. Thank you for sticking with me through this difficult story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more true-to-life narratives. Most importantly, share your thoughts in the comments. What does family truly mean? And what would you do to protect yours? To hear another story, click on the video that's on your screen now. Thank you for watching.